Hi there, and welcome to another episode of BunkaMania Wrestling here on the BunkaMania channel. I'm your host, the Dekker Dane, and today we're going to be talking all things the Iron Claw. And to join me to talk about the movie, I have our regular contributor and guest, Harriett, aka Manga Girl. Harriett, hello, how are you doing today?
Good, not so bad. It's a nice sunny day outside, and it's warm. I don't like it. We're so used to the rain now.
It's the typical thing with us Brits. It's either it's too cold and we don't like it, it's too sunny and we don't like it. We need that nice tepid in between weather. That's what we want. Tepid in between weather.
Exactly.
I mean, looking outside, because I've got the window right in front of me. It is a very nice sort of sunny, breezy sort of spring day. It's quite nice, especially when we're going to be talking about something very kind of sad and tragic. Yes, but before we begin, to our listeners and to our viewers, thank you so much for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you're watching on YouTube and you enjoy the video, why not consider giving this video a thumbs up? And if you want more wrestling-themed content from BunkaMania on your YouTube feed, then hit the subscribe button. If you are listening to our audio version on platforms such as Spotify or Apple, then why not consider subscribing to the podcast feed, leaving a review, or even recommending the show to a friend. Especially with the audio version, we do from time to time do special audio-only versions. We do a mini-series called BunkaMania Goes to the Movies, which we've done a couple of episodes of. There will be more episodes to come in the future. So if you want to get the full BunkaMania experience, make sure you subscribe to YouTube and audio channels at the same time. So yes, that is out of the way. Let's talk about the Iron Claw. The Iron Claw is the cinematic dramatization of the Von Erich family during the 80s and early 90s. To many wrestling fans, the Von Erich family is a very iconic, well, I would say iconic, but also a very well-known wrestling family. When you consider the Rhodes family, you consider the whole bloodline situation family with the whole OI tribe, all that sort of stuff, the Hart family, all that sort of stuff. The Von Erich is just as an important family in that sort of realm. So the film follows the careers of Kevin Von Erich, David Von Erich, Kerry Von Erich, and Michael Von Erich under the intense scrutiny of their father, Fritz Von Erich, who is determined to make the Von Erichs wrestling's greatest family. The film ultimately charts a number of tragic events that befall the family under this intense period of their lives. Film is written and directed by Sean Durkin, who has done Martha, Marcy, May, Marlene, try saying that 3 times fast, and stars Zac Efron as Kevin Von Erich, Jeremy Allen White from The Bear as Kerry Von Erich, Harris Dickinson as David Von Erich, and Holt McCauley as the intimidating Fritz Von Erich. There we go. That is the Iron Claw in a nutshell. Now, in terms of going into this film, I mean, I think the tragedy of the Von Erich family is, I think for most wrestling fans, quite well known. I think if you're going in as a wrestling fan and you're very aware of what befalls some members of this family, you are kind of wondering or kind of preparing yourself to whether or not you're going to get something that's startlingly intense and very shocking. And it's very easy. I think in a different filmmaker's hands, this film could be very brutal. Very brutal and very visceral brutal as well. I think one of the credits to this film is that it takes some very tragic moments in this family's life, and they are shocking, they are very sad, they are very tragic, but it's done in a sort of, I'd say, quiet devastation. I think that's the best way, because you don't see some of this stuff necessarily happen on the screen. It's hinted at, it's kind of very kind of minimalistic, but the devastation is shown, I think, more in the emotional reaction of a lot of the characters in this film.
It's kind of up to your imagination as well, because
yeah, absolutely,
it's probably the best way.
Yeah, I think the first thing going into it is, I think from our point of view, is what we really know about the Von Erich family, and obviously the tragedy behind. Because obviously, for wrestling fans, some fans might not necessarily know about the Von Erichs. Harriet, why don't you take a talk for a little bit and kind of give your sort of your basic knowledge of the Von Erichs going into this film?
I knew of them, but I didn't know of the family history as such. Because even though I'm a wrestling fan, there are times I still don't know everything, and I still learn every day. But it was only in the last few years when this movie was announced that I started looking into it. And then recently, Wrestle Talk did a video talking about the Von Erichs, and Cultaholic have done one as well. There's also Dark Side of the Ring, which I haven't watched, but I do need to. So that's how I've learned of the Von Erichs. And recently, I don't know how long ago it was, but they were inducted into the Hall of Fame. So that's another reason how I learned in regards to them. But going in, I had a vague idea of what the movie was going to be like, but like you said, it was kind of how it was going to be perceived. So I knew it wasn't going to be a delightful film to go into. It was going to be more of a, okay, let's see what level they can do it at. But that's how I learnt of the Von Erichs. It was mainly just thanks to other YouTube videos talking about it mainly.
I did a little bit of research where you're talking there, Harriet. Von Erichs were inducted into the Hall of Fame, I believe, in 2009.
Okay, my gosh, it was that long ago?
Yes,
Wow.
I believe so. I will double check just to make sure.
Seems like yesterday, to be fair.
Yes,
they kind of all roll into one. Okay.
Yes, 2009 is when they were inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame. So yeah, from my point of view, again, it's like I know the basics of the story. I know the basics of I know the crib notes of the history. I think kind of delving deeper into it, not necessarily was something I was fully aware of. And I think the film does kind of a good job to kind of suggest ways of how the tragedy and the downfall kind of comes into play, because the core aspect of this film is the relationship of the brothers, of the Von Erich brothers, with their father Fritz von Erich. And it's set out very early on, especially in like a flashback where Fritz von Erich is, I think he's still trying to wrestle for the NWA World Heavyweight Championship. And he is telling two of his young sons at the time, it's basically, if you want to be the best wrestler out there, you have to be the strongest, you have to be the fittest, you have to be the best, you have to be the most determined, and you've got to be willing to do what it takes to succeed. And that is a mindset that is instilled in them, in these two boys at the time, the rest of the brothers in the film. It's instilled throughout the film, and it's pretty much the sole cause of, I wouldn't say it's the sole cause, but it is lofty expectations, and sometimes possibly unrealistic expectations that Fritz is putting on to the Von Erichs, to these young men who are trying to figure out what they want to do in life. I mean, Kerry Von Erich at the start of the film, he's about to enter the Olympics. He's about to represent America in the Olympics. The Cold War situation at the time, America pulls out of the Olympics. Kerry doesn't get to go. And it's sort of guided. And I put guided in those good old-fashioned, as good old Luke would say, the Bucky O'Hare there. Little shout out for Luke there. In the big old Bucky O'Hare of, why don't you consider wrestling, son? Because it would be good for you. In that sort of way.
Yeah. No, I was going to say, there was also a bit at the beginning, I think, of that when he said, oh, you could be working in an office or you could be doing this. And then suddenly, but hey, you could be a wrestler. You could join your brothers.
Hey, you join your brothers. You want to do wrestling? Wrestling seems like wrestling's good. Have I told you that I like you to wrestle lately? Wrestle?
Have I hinted at it?
Wrestle. Have I hinted at it? Have I hinted by making your own costume? Have I hinted about it? Have I hinted about it by just just saying every day how I wish one of you will become the NWA World Heavyweight Champion?
There's like a poster, and it's just like them, all of them, just like here. Have I not hinted?
Have I not hinted this enough? Have I not hinted this enough?
Oh god!
I'm just going to tweak the brightness a little bit here on the. If you're watching on video, I've just tweaked up my brightness because things are getting dark. Well, not really dark. I mean, the film is. We got to find some humor somewhere in this, I suppose. And just to clarify, those sort of things don't necessarily happen in the film. Fritz Ronning does not go, "I've made your outfit for you, Kerry."
No, no,
Off
no.
you go. Off you go.
No.
Uh,
The
yeah,
right
so
size and all.
it's the right size and all. It matches your brothers. Off you go. Uh,
Oh
um,
gosh.
yeah. So going back to my point about Fritz's influence and Fritz's sort of pressure, and kind of
Mm,
it's not like direct pressure of you are going to be a wrestler, or I'm going to disown you, or you're going to be a wrestler, or I'm going to do terrible things to you in that sort of way. It's like he's a parent, but I think it's the thing of he would like you to do something which would make him very happy, and
yeah.
if you don't, then he probably won't respect it, and he'll be pretty devastatingly disappointed for the remainder of your life. Is what I think is
Yeah.
kind of the sense I get with Fritz, and it's like because if we focus on the film for a second, so the film is predominantly told through the eyes of Kevin Von Erich, played by Zac Efron, who I think does a really, really good job in this film.
Oh,
Um,
fantastic. So good.
also, if you're trying to make a He-Man live action film, just simply look at how well built he is in this film. He lit with the bowl cut hair,
I was gonna say the hair.
the build, the sort of lovable complexion. It's like if you want to make a He-Man live action, you're looking for your perfect He-Man. You look at Zac Efron right now, because
Yeah.
he's a good build for it right now. But no, I think Zac Efron, obviously most people know him from High School Musical. He's been kind of obviously doing the odd like Hollywood film Baywatch with a certain Dwayne The Rock Johnson, comedy stuff like Neighbours, or Bad Neighbours, I think it's called in the UK, that sort of stuff. But he has been doing like small indie films from time to time. This being the latest, and I think he does a very good job in this. He does a very good job in this, and I think we will go back. We'll touch a little bit more about some of the quieter, devastating moments, I think, towards the end of the film, including some of the film's sort of final sort of closing scenes. But yeah, just going back to Fritz and that sort of sense of pressure, and also playing the brothers off one another as well, because
Yeah.
there's a scene early on where basically Kerry has come in and joined David. He's joined Kevin, and they've won like the trios, the 3-man belt from NWA, and they cut and Fritz cuts this big promo in the ring, just saying how proud he is of the boys. And then he sets out the lofty goals of each of my sons are going to become the NWA World Heavyweight Champion at some point down the line. First, it could very well be Kerry, and then it could be David, and then it could be Kevin. And he's just basically, it's like at that moment where the brothers are quite happy with what they're doing, and then they think, oh yeah, dad's happy with us now. We've got some belts, we've got NWA gold, dad's happy with us. And then it's just that sort of, no, my sons are going to become the world champion, whether they like it or not, in a sort of non-verbal but kind of verbal cue there. And you just kind of see their sort of reactions of, oh, okay.
I think Mike as well, because he was thrown in
Yeah.
as well, and then suddenly he was just
Yeah.
like, "Oh, but I want to be a musician."
Yeah.
Oh, oh
Yeah.
dear. You
Yeah.
see his face just drop, and just you
Well,
think, "Oh,
and in the terms of the film, I think Michael becomes more of an active wrestler, I think, following I think the passing of David, which we'll start touching on
yes,
a little bit. But yes, no, you're it's basically, again, it's like, even though Michael Von Erich in the film wants to be uh, uh, a musician, it's still kind of like, you should really bulk up and join your brothers in the ring, because that's what the family requires. It's yeah, it's very
it's hard."
uncomfortable. It's hard. It is hard to watch per se.
It,
Um, yeah, so it's this first act of the film kind of builds up that sort of dynamic,
mm,
and then moving onwards, we start the sort of downward spiral of the family, and first and foremost, it starts with David Von Erich, who is the chosen one of the brothers by Fritz, because they have an opportunity to have one of the brothers go up against Ric Flair, but they have to go on this massive sort of 6-month tour. They need to go off and do wrestling all across America. Then they go to Japan, and then they have this massive stadium match where, in theory, they should, by booking, win the belt.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, tragically, it doesn't pan out that way, as, and I need to double check my notes here, so 2 seconds, everyone, where unfortunately David Von Erich doesn't make that final match because he passes away during the Tokyo tour due to acute entericitis. And it's, again, it's like I say at the start, it's like the film doesn't necessarily show it. It's just basically you see David being very ill at Kevin's wedding in the toilet, very violently ill as well. It's very uncomfortable to see.
That
And
was
then,
not a pretty watch, I will say.
And then 2 scenes later, Zac Efron's coming to the kitchen. There's Fritz, and it's like, oh, your brother's died. And it's like, it's not, it's very sad. It's very tragic in that regard.
I think one of the things of the movie is that they were afraid to express sadness because they couldn't grieve. And you saw that a few times in the film as well, that, you know, even though they tried to, they couldn't because they had to be men, and men don't cry, and it was just like God has given the reason why he should not be here, and it's just like, oh my gosh, because I have seen like on TV and stuff like that where, you know, it's like the God fearing and under the thumb sort of thing. So when you see that, it's very uncomfortable, and you just think you just want to hug them, or you just want to comfort them. Not even their mother, Doris, could comfort them even in that time of need. So yeah,
and again, it's tragedy befalls the family, but to Fritz, it's kind of like it's a setback. We carry on, because it's like it really doubles down Fritz's sort of intense parenting when it comes to the evening of the funeral, because after they have David's funeral, himself, Kevin, Kerry, even Michael, they're sat on the front porch, and Fritz has just gone, well, David's passed away. That's sad, but someone needs to step up and take his place in this match and win the belt for the family.
That got me so riled up. It really did, because it was just like, your son is not even a few hours buried, and you suddenly decided, well, okay, let's move on. Who's going to be the new NWA champion? Is it going to be you? Is it going to be you?
Yeah. And it gets to the point where it's just gone, well, I can't decide between you, so coin flip.
Yeah, exactly.
And yeah, that monumental coin flip leads to Kerry Von Erich taking on Ric Flair and winning the belt. But I think, but then the film shows the pressures of even kind of achieving that under father scrutiny, because it's pretty much instantaneously in the film. It might have been longer in the film. It might have been longer in real life, but pretty much instantaneously after kind of winning the belt, Kerry Von Erich gets into a motorcycle accident and has a foot amputated. And yes, in that kind of, I think that kind of compounds the tragedy a little bit there, but also for Kerry, it compounds a lot of setbacks. Obviously, you've got the Olympics there, and now he doesn't have a foot, he doesn't have one of his feet anymore, and that makes wrestling extremely hard. And when his father has repeatedly told him wrestling is the family business, you've got to be able to wrestle and all that sort of stuff, it obviously puts a lot more pressure on. But but in the film, I think the order of the film, it doesn't necessarily start with, we do return to the pressures Kerry faces later on, because we then turn our attentions to Michael Von Erich, who in the film is played by, and I'm going to double check my notes right now, is played by Stanley Simons. Apologies if I've got it right or wrong on both those counts there. And again, we talked about earlier, he's at the start, he wants to be a musician. He has no real interest in wrestling. He respects it in his family, but obviously it's not something that he necessarily wants to do straight away. Kind of gets a bit of an ire from father at the start there. But after David's passing, Kerry's accident, Michael decides to actually get in the ring, does some training, and during a shoulder injury, he gets toxic shock, which leaves him fairly debilitated. So he's fairly unable to properly wrestle and all that sort of aspect, and the pressure. And again, the film demonstrates that the pressure and just not being able to live up to expectations ultimately drives Michael von Erich to sadly take his life with a tranquilizer overdose.
There was a scene in the press conference that really, another thing that kind of shocked me. It was when they were asking Mike, "Oh, when do you think you'll be back in the ring?" And you can see it was a case of, no way is that lad ever getting back in the ring. But then it pans off to the corner where you see Fritz, and it's just like that stare of like, you will say you're going back in. Oh, well, I think it was Kevin who filled it in saying, "Oh, well, we're not sure." But it was a case of say the right thing, and it was just like, that was very uncomfortable to watch also as well, because it's just like, you can see he cannot wrestle, but if you told that to Fritz, he'd be like, nonsense, he'll be out wrestling in a month's time and stuff like that. So that was kind of that pressure. You felt it as well, even though it's not you, but still it's just like, oh yeah not good.
And at that point, obviously the shock and the grief in that is really playing on Kevin von Erich at the time in this film as well. But we turn our attentions back to Kerry von Erich, who has managed to get a contract with the WWF at the time. WWE has become Intercontinental Champion, despite the fact having one vote. So again, overcoming adversity to get it to the big stage and to win a belt on a big stage like that is still quite a monumental achievement. And there's a scene at Christmas Day or Christmas Eve where he's come to revisit the family. Kerry's back there. He's got a gift of a gun for his dad, all that sort of stuff. And his dad's gone, I'm proud that you're in the WWF and you've got the Intercontinental Champion, but when are you going to win the WWF Championship? It's like,
there's never
it's never enough.
It's never enough. It's just like, so can you achieve higher? You're going to achieve higher.
Yeah.
It's never, I'm proud of you for this moment. It's more like, but how are you going to improve on yourself? And you think, oh my dear God,
Yeah. And again, that sort of, it kind of spitballs, because we have the moment to basically Kerry's career with WWF is very, very short. His contract, I don't think it gets renewed, and that's the catalyst of mental instability for Kerry, because it's like wrestling is all he's been taught about. Wrestling is all he's been told by his dad is important, being the best, being the great, being the strongest, all that, and he can't achieve that. And I think even though he shares these issues with his brother Kevin at the time, and Kevin is desperately trying to look out for his brothers at this point in time, he's unable to stop Kerry taking his life via a self-inflicted gun wound towards the end of the film. And it's just all these sort of three elements, they just in their own different ways underline that sort of poor mental health, but also it underlines that sort of no way out, it's like they don't see any positive way they can achieve their goals, but also keep their keep their father happy, more or less.
Yeah. It's like they feel like they've let the family down.
Yeah. Or more. Yeah, I'd say it's more they've let Fritz down, or their disappointment of Fritz, because he's the one who has hit the lofty goals of the wrestling empire.
He's pushed their goals. He's pushed his goals onto them. It is very much a very common trait where if I can't achieve this dream, but you're going to achieve it for me, sort of thing.
Mm.
And that's the pressure of like, well, we are going to get this gold, because it was legitimately playing favorites, because it was going to
Yeah.
be Kevin at the beginning, and Kevin was building up for it, and then he was kind of moved to a side. Then it was, yeah, and then it just kind of it carried on. So in a way, even though it's kind of, I don't know, this sounds terrible. It's kind of good in the way that Kevin didn't get it, because you wouldn't know what would happen if that had happened.
True.
I mean, it is full of what ifs, sort of thing. But I think also another person who saved him was his wife, was Pam, who's played by
Yeah.
Lily James. So
Yes, you're right. Lily James.
she saved him, I think, because in the beginning of the film, you saw when Fritz was trying to pressure Mike to bulk up, and he went to his mum, Doris, and she was just like, "Oh, just talk amongst yourselves. It's between you brothers." And you sort of think, well, you could see like you could help, but she was kind of fearful in a way of like stepping out of bounds herself with Fritz. So that hug that Pam gave when he told his story of his older brother, and how she said, "Oh, you have older brother syndrome," which is very much true, because he is looking out for his younger brothers. And that hug, it was just like, okay, there is someone who does care, and she is kind of that massive pillar to him throughout the movie. Even though there was kind of like a separation in between, but he realized in halfway through, after all the tragedy, he needed her, so went back. And I thought she was great in the movie to help him, and in real life as well. That was just his way of like living, I suppose. I think that's what the brothers needed. They need that validation of love, which they didn't really get, I suppose. I think in a way, it's like you said, if they'd won the champion, and if they did win the championship, they just wanted that love from Fritz, but it was never enough. It was just like, okay, what's the next step? What's the next step? And there was probably never going to be an end goal in the end, which is sad in that industry.
Because you can pretty much imagine, you could probably imagine that if Fritz lived long enough because Fritz passed away in 1997, but there are further generations of Von Erichs that are currently doing wrestling. I think a couple actually appeared on AEW recently as well with what's his name, Dustin Rhodes. Yes, that's him, Dustin Rhodes, Cody's brother, Cody's older brother. There you go. But yes, it's so you could imagine that. You could easily imagine that if Kevin's children had grown up and Fritz was possibly alive at that time, Fritz would be going, "I want your grandchildren to do wrestling," because they're going to cement this dynasty even further. But yeah, just touch on it, because I think for a lot, if you're very well versed in the story of the Von Erichs, or you know the history of the Von Erichs, the brothers that are covered in this film are not the full family. There are two other brothers who are not mentioned, well, who don't really necessarily get on screen per se. I think we do have the very first child, Jack Atkinson Jr., who was Fritz von Erich's first son, who died at the age of 7 I think at the age of 6 in 1959 through a tragic electrocution accident. So we only see his first son in like the opening flashback. There is also the story. There's also Chris von Erich, who again was another member of the family who passed away due to suicide. But he's not featured in the film. And the reason why Durkin, who's the writer and director of the film, was asked about this, and basically just said he said in an interview, and it's on Collider.com, that there was a repetition to the events of the film, and it's one more tragedy that the film couldn't really withstand. And I can see his point there. Because you're going from one shocking loss to the other. And while we talked about it being like it's quietly devastating rather than fully in your face or fully kind of really gratuitous per se, I could see the film probably being just too depressing and too sad for the sake of just being. I'm trying to make this sound where I'm not saying it's going to be too sad of its own good, despite the fact it's already a very sad and depressing story in itself.
Yeah.
Obviously, because in essence, to say the bottom line with the film is, I'm happy that I saw the film, and I think it's a very, very good film. To say that I enjoyed the film, especially when it comes to subject matters like this, and especially when it comes to tragic stories like this, you can't really say you enjoyed the film, because it's you definitely don't come out there feeling like you've learned, but you get an idea, but you don't come out saying I enjoyed learning about that, because these are stories you don't want to hear about in the world of wrestling, and we've had our fair share of very tragic and horrific stories in wrestling. So I honestly don't know why I'm getting my point, but I think I think listeners and viewers, and I think Eric can understand where I'm going with my point. Basically, if you want people to engage with the film, and you want people to actually go out and watch the film, being told it's a film where people just die tragically every 15 minutes is probably not what's going to get a producer to go, yes, here's the money, off you go.
Yeah. I think in a way the story is appreciated, the fact that it was told.
Yes.
I suppose that's one way of saying it, because you're right. There is no way of saying it's not happy. It's not. You knew going in it was not going to be, but yeah, I think because I thought about this on the way home, thinking I can't tell people I really enjoyed this film because of what happened. So obviously I just thought, well, maybe appreciate might be a better word, because you've watched it, you've seen what happens, and you're fine with that, and it's kind of, the story, and I can understand why they didn't put the fourth one. I don't know if anyone could have handled that. I mean, in the 10 minutes after Kerry's, I was just in tears, like till the end, till the credits, like silent tears, and then full on sobbing when they had the scene afterwards, which I won't spoil, but it was just a case of, I'm glad I was in the front row. If I was in the back row, I probably would have been heard. So, appreciative, I think, is a good way of saying it. I did like at the end, though, not like it, but that's the wrong word, but how Doris broke out of being ruled, per se, because I think this is when everyone had moved out. Everyone was not there, and it was shown she was a painter in halfway through the film. Like Mike was looking at a painting, and she said, "Oh yeah, that was me of my family home. I don't remember it." And at the end, she was just drawing or painting something, and Fritz came in and was saying, "What's for dinner?" And she's like, "I haven't cooked anything." And you think, "Oh." And this is you're happy for her, and then it was kind of, you could see, because she was literally like a woman who could not show any emotion at all, especially after her son's tragedies. Like you could see I think it was Kerry's funeral, Mike's funeral, I'm not sure, where Pam had to comfort her, and she tried so much not to cry, and was just more worried about the fact that she wore the same dress, and it was just like, no one's going to care. But obviously she thought, because everyone's watching her, because they're this famous family, that's the first thing, and probably worried like the what ifs in the future. So I was very appreciative at the end of her kind of breaking away from that and going back to what she used to love. But it was just sad that was the way it had to happen, in a way. But yeah.
And just for benefit of everyone, Doris von Erich is played by Maura Tierney in Tierney. Get that surname correct. For people who would like to know who's playing that person in the film.
She's really good as Doris, I have to say. Amazing.
Yeah. Obviously, it's a wrestling film, so we have some very, very light. Well, we have some. I would say impersonations, but we have some appearances by well-known wrestlers in the film. There's a really Harley Race appears early on in the film. Not the actual wrestler Harley Race, but someone impersonating Harley Race, which I think they did a very, very good job of doing. That was Kevin Anton being Harley Race. There's a lot of talk about
I know what you're going to say.
The Ric Flair one. who
Oh,
was played in the film by Aaron Dean Eisenberg. And
he looked like him.
he looked like it. He did. He did, especially when it came to like match time with Kevin in the film. It's like, yes, he definitely looks like Ric Flair. You have the sort of pre-promo. You have the pre-match promo, and I guess it's trying not to do a cartoon impersonation of Ric Flair because it's very easy. You just go into the woo sort of thing.
Yeah.
You're going, I'm a profiling, limousine riding. That's even me. I can't even do a damn good Ric Flair impersonation.
It was better than what happened in the film.
Yeah,
it was kind of very tame. It was kind of like, I don't know. It sounded like was reading from a script. I don't know.
It's kind of like be kind of Ric Flair, but don't use it, but don't do an accent. I was like, all right, okay. I think if you didn't know anything about who Ric Flair was in the wrestling world and all that sort of stuff, and you have never heard Ric Flair in your life, you would have gone, all right, he's just a man with a lot of white wavy hair. Whereas for the wrestling fans, myself, Aaron, and a predominant audience that I can imagine watching this film, they'd probably going, it's like it's the wish.com Ric Flair. And I feel mean for saying it. But it's just kind of like, you want Ric Flair, but I don't want to spend too much. Here you go.
We have the Ric Flair at home. It's the wish.com. Oh god, that's probably the perfect way you could describe that.
Yeah, and it's like I can genuinely see that they were trying to recreate as best they can.
Yeah,
the Ric Flair of the time there, but it's just
the hair was great.
The bloody hair, post-match Ric Flair going, oh, I want to go to a bar and get fucked up, that sort of stuff. Yeah, that all works. Yep. That all works. Yep. It's just something about that promo and the initial voice that makes me go, well, this is weird.
This doesn't sit right.
Obviously they try to be authentic as best they can. I mean, they've brought in a number of wrestlers to appear in the film. I think Chavo Guerrero appears as the Iron Sheik. Yeah, I think it's more of a blink if you miss him.
Very much.
Even one of the film's executive producers appears as a fictional Von Erich, and that is good old Maxwell Jacob Freeman, just randomly popping up for 10 seconds in the middle of a match, just doing a move, and then with big comedy sort of wig, doing a big bicep curl flex for people. And it's kind of like, again, you're a wrestling fan and you see MJF and you go, huh, that's MJF. It takes you out of the moment where the shot at the time is you're slowly zooming in on Zac Efron, who is still trying to process a lot. Because here, I mean, this is the point where I think this is after Michael's passing. And it's like, you're going in for that, and it's like, oh, there's MJF. And it's like, okay.
Even I saw him, I was like, oh my God, because I wasn't expecting to see him at all, because I heard he'd been cut out of the film. So to see him, I was just like, oh, there he is. But also, wait, I'm in the movie.
I think when the DVD Blu-ray comes out, there might be a lot of deleted scenes that we will actually see.
Yeah.
Hopefully
I wouldn't mind seeing that.
Or an extended cut. You never know.
Photos, of them together.
Yeah.
So
absolutely. So I think we can sum up the Iron Claw here. Now, if I was to give this a film rating, because sometimes I tend to give film ratings out of 5, I would be very comfortable giving this 4. To be honest, I think it's a good insight into the world of wrestling at that time. A good study of sometimes the mental pressures, I guess, people go through when they're doing wrestling. It's kind of like a weird companion piece to it might be The Wrestler, Darren Aronofsky's The Wrestler, because even though it's about the fictional wrestler that's played by Mickey Rourke, again, a lot of the similarities of mental tolls, like the breakdown of social relationships, physical toll. It is all there, just obviously with modern wrestling. Whereas with the Iron Claw, it's more. I feel it is more emotional, more mental toll than anything, I suppose. But I think if you are interested in wrestling, if you're interested in wrestling history, if you're interested, or if you're very well aware of the Von Erich family, then definitely give it a watch, at least a watch, I'd say. Yes, that's my sort of thoughts on it, Harriet.
Yeah, I knew going in, like I said, it was not going to be a happy film. Even my dad said to me before I went, "Oh, he said," because wrestling, he deems it as somewhat fun sometimes. He said, "Oh, is it going to be a good fun movie?" I'm like, no. He doesn't. And I
No.
told him, I explained afterwards, and he was like, "No, that's understandable." I mean, yeah, I knew going in it wasn't going to be happiness and rainbows and whatnot, but I did, like I said, appreciate the story. I thought it was well told. I think it was done the best to its abilities. I think if you had gone more, I think it was just right, because if you'd gone more, like if you'd shown more graphically, I wouldn't have enjoyed it. But the way that they kind of told it, and then the before and after, was well done, and done in a way that was kind of, nothing more needed to be said or done. So I appreciated what I watched. I probably would watch it again when it comes out, and if there are extras, I'd look forward to seeing those as well.
So at time of recording, we're recording this on Sunday the 18th of February. At time of recording, the Iron Claw is still showing at UK cinemas. I believe it's just gone to VOD in America, and I think the American DVD Blu-ray release is scheduled for the end of March as well. So if you have seen the film and like to share your thoughts, do let us know your thoughts in the comments below if you're watching the YouTube version, or you can email them over to contact@BunkaMania.com. It'll be great to hear your thoughts on the movie. And with that, we are coming towards the end of this episode. Thank you so much for watching and listening. We are going to be back very, very soon with another episode, hopefully with a full contingent with Jeremy and Matty Boo again. We're coming up to a very busy period in wrestling. We are on the road to WrestleMania, but the next stop is the Elimination Chamber in Australia. And that was me trying to do an Australian accent. Failed miserably. And my family out in Australia might feel ashamed of me right now, and I'm sorry. But yes, coming up in WWE Canada, we've got Elimination Chamber next week. Week after that, it's AEW's Revolution as well, which will be the debut of Will Ospreay in the promotion, as well as Sting's final match as well. And then it's all steam ahead towards WrestleMania 14.
It's good. It's just like, it's non-stop at the moment. I love it.
The wrestling continues to keep going on forever here. It will never stop. Who will actually have won who's actually won the wrestling, we'll never know. But your best bet is to try and follow it with us. And maybe, who knows? We'll try and connect the dots. We'll do some pie charts, line graphs. We'll do Pictionary. I don't know. Something along those lines. Who knows? Who knows? But your best bet is with us here on BunkaMania Wrestling. So, if you would love more content from us, then please, whether you're watching, whether you're listening, please hit the subscribe button. It would be great to have your support. So, until next time, thank you so much for joining us. I have been the Dekker Dane, joined by Harriett. And before I even finish off, we haven't actually said where people can follow Harriett on social media and on Twitch. Harriett, do remind our lovely listeners and viewers what they can do.
So on Twitter, I am at Manga Girl 232. So I post random stuff on there, but mainly my schedule of what I'm doing on Twitch or YouTube. Twitch is Harriett_Manga Girl, and at the moment I'm trying to clear out the Lego collection that I've got, and also trying to level up on Fortnite and various things like that. So I think this week, because I think it's the last week, I think, of the current season for Fortnite, I might be playing that, maybe.
I think first weekend of March is when the new season starts, so it's kind of like trying to get all the turtle stuff done at the moment. So
exactly, for me, I've done all the music, and I'm good with that. So it's just yeah, turtles. That's the next thing. So yeah, I'll probably be streaming Tuesday or Wednesday, depending. But yeah, follow me on Twitter. I always put up like a few hours before when I'm going to stream. So yeah, you can catch me on there.
Perfect. So, with that, thank you so much for watching. We will see you again very soon here on BunkaMania Wrestling. Until next time, stay safe, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.